a lot of the current research in psychology um, is really suggesting that Americans are more dissatisfied and disenfranchised now than they've ever really been at other points, and that's kind of interesting because you think like the whole idea of the American dream is that anything is possible if you put the time and the work, that you can achieve anything you want. But all the data right now is telling us Americans are more dissatisfied than they've ever been, more uncertain about their future, more stressed and depressed than we've been at other points. And it's fascinating when you think about that because we're living in a time when people have never had as much as we have right now. There's a psychologist named David Myers, and he's got a really fascinating essay where he sort of talks about this whole idea that we're living in a time where we've never had as much as we have now, and no one else has as much as Americans have, and yet our rates of psychological illness are increasing. So I think one of the really fascinating questions is why is that? I mean, it's interesting because my sense tells me that that the whole idea of the American dream is really about opportunity. People have opportunities. It would make sense that they're excited about about those opportunities. I mean, I think that's historically sort of the reality of the American dream is all these immigrants that came in these waves came because they could have something here that they couldn't have at home, and so that desire for opportunity, that desire to achieve more, that desire to have a better life than their parents had, it really fueled again these massive waves of immigration. And I suppose for some people that opportunity, that optimism still exists, but again the trends, the larger psychological trends right now are that it's not such a positive view of the dream.
Right.
So I think that's kind of interesting because it seems like there's this perception that part of the attraction of the lure of America is the idea that this dream is there. I think people still believe it, or I think people still want to believe it, and yet, like I said, it's not all this research that's out there right now is just talking about how increasingly dissatisfied Americans have become with their lives, and again at a time when humans or I say humans, Americans are enjoying tremendous prosperity and living lives that quality of lives that we've never had at other points in history. So how can we have all this stuff around us and be so unhappy?
So, from the perspective now, or the psychological aspect of the American dream now, compared to that of like the time of Gatsby and things like that,
Yeah.
how do you think it's changed?
That's a really interesting question. To me, something fundamentally changed during the 1960s. I really, and I would have to look at what is, if there's any psych research out there around this, but I just think the whole, the 1960s were such a profound period of, it was such a significant period of change when, when the prosperity of the 50s and we were coming out of the Second World War and wealth was increasing and there was such a positive, view of the world and of what was possible, and then we get into the 60s and the civil rights movement and the assassinations of Martin Luther King and John Kennedy and Robert Kennedy, the failure of Vietnam, the scandal surrounding Nixon and Watergate, and the government can't be trusted. I don't think that I don't know if that we've ever really recovered from that. I think born out of that period was just this sense that that we couldn't trust the government, and if we can't trust the government, then who can we trust? If the government's not working for us, something's been. I think something's been lost, and I think that the 60s are an important part of it. I mean, Gatsby, it's like such a tragic figure, such a tragic story, but I think there's something there too about disillusionment, and I have everything, but I don't have happiness, right? I mean, so just thinking about psychology, but studies actually show that people, it's not so much having wealth that makes people happy, it's how you use your wealth, and typically we see happiness increase when people are what's the word? Philanthropic? Is that the word? Philanthropic?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. When they're using their wealth to help others, and so it isn't just about accumulating possessions, and that gets us kind of back to that Myers article that I'll send you. But it's just you can have lots of stuff, but what does it mean ultimately? It just, I think, leads to this need to have more stuff, but we're sort of in the moment of getting something, we're kind of like instantaneously gratified, but then it passes, and okay, now I've got to go and get something, I got to go and get something else. I mean, I think that's kind of like one of maybe the downfalls of being a consumer society, that we're so sort of in the moment of I finally got this and I've wanted this, and okay, now I'm going to enjoy this, and at some point that joy dissipates, and it's like I've got to go find something else to consume now so I can be happy again, and that sort of cycle that we're in. Yeah.
And I kind of want to get your view on what the American dream is to you. Like, what is?
Well, I mean, I would say I talked earlier the idea of opportunity. I grew up neither of my parents went to college. My father joined the military out of high school, and then he did his 4 years in the Navy. He got a job at a company in New Hampshire where I grew up, and that's where he worked for 50 years, 47 years. And he got promoted, and so he started there working night shift, and when he left there, he was the head of the sales department, the head of the service department. I guess that, so that to me is the American dream, that you have an opportunity. It doesn't guarantee you that you're not entitled, you have this opportunity, and can you make the most of it? You know, I had probably more opportunities than my parents had, but I learned the importance of working hard, and you know, and I look at my life now. I've got, you know, I've got a job, nice house that I can afford to pay for, you know, 2 kids, you know, a dog, like everything.
Yeah.
I guess that's sort of, you know, that is a pretty, is sort of that, I guess, the typical kind of American dream. The reality is that I mean, I think now what we're seeing is that today's generation, maybe last generation, but we're kind of in this point now where kids aren't guaranteed that they're going to have a better future than their parents, which is kind of scary.
Do you think that youth's understanding in their own development of the American dream is dependent on their parents, or?
Yeah, I think it definitely helps. I mean, I think kids are kids. I mean, I'm not. I probably stuff I'm articulating now. I wouldn't, if you would have asked me as a junior in high school, you know, I don't know that I would have been able to articulate. I think I had a sense that my parents worked hard. I definitely had a sense that my parents worked hard, but you know, at the same time, I was, to some extent, probably in the moment. I think that's just how kind of kids are. They're you know, their parts of their brain are still developing. Back to psychology, you know, they're growing up, and they're learning to think more abstractly about the world, and so I think as you continue to kind of age, as you have experiences, I think it helps you to sort of look back and make realizations and see things that you didn't necessarily see at the time.